Well, I wanted to share with you, first of all, a little bit of my story. I think that'll help personalize this whole study. I was raised in College Station, Texas, and raised in a family with two brothers and a sister. My father, unfortunately, was a controlling abuser. He was very angry when he didn't get his way. He was also a narcissist, and unfortunately this meant it was all about him, and what he was trying to do is to basically live his life through his three sons. In other words, our reputation was important to him because if we made mistakes, created problems, that tarnished his reputation. And my dad was unfortunately a verbal abuser, an emotional abuser. And so early on in life, I kept thinking that I needed to do something more to allow my dad to maybe earn his love, acceptance, and worth. But it seemed like every time I would do something, it raised the bar so that I could never quite meet his expectations. So by age 18, I literally had feelings of just being inadequate, of less than. But in addition, also, I had these strongholds of fear and anxiety, inadequacy. And just thinking if I could get some affirmation from my dad, I could feel good about myself. And so that's the way I lived the first 18 years of my life, trying to earn the approval of my father. But I never could quite get there. And at age 18, I went to a former Baptist pastor's home. My mother had just been saved in her mid-40s, and she said, "You need to go see this guy by the name of Prof. Smith." I found out that he was the only person who ever taught Bible at Texas A&M for a semester, but I couldn't figure out why she wanted me to go see this guy. And so I get there, and he sits down, and he says, "Tell me all about yourself." Well, at age 18, with all the accomplishments, because see, the message from my dad was failure's not an option. You're going to succeed at all cost. And so when he asked me to tell me about myself, I was my favorite subject. So I began just telling him all the accomplishments, all the accolades that I had gotten, because in our household, you had to perform to even be close to being accepted. And so when I got through, he simply said, "Well, I've got one question for you, is where does Jesus fit into that?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." And he said, "Well, let me tell you." Well, at that point, I trusted Christ. I went to Texas A&M University, which is located in College Station. And I thought, well, my dad had come from the farm, and he'd come to the school, and it was all military. And so I thought if I could just follow into his footsteps and join the Corps of Cadets and be a distinguished military graduate and a company commander, that maybe that would finally do it. I could just somehow earn that love and acceptance and worth from my dad. Well, I went through 4 years. I didn't have much of a spiritual life, but I went through 4 years of A&M, succeeding at everything I was doing, hoping at some point I would earn that love. But after 4 years of accomplishing everything my dad did, it was to no avail. And so I went in the Army for a short stint, and I came back, and I started working with the college group, and that really kind of began my Christian journey. And so as I approached these men who were working with the students at Texas A&M, I said, "Well, what do I need to do to be a good Christian? What do I need to do to live the Christian life?" Well, it's amazing because they had a checklist for me. And some of the things on this checklist were quiet time and Bible study and evangelism and ministry and church. And, every one of those is spiritual. But the problem was my attitude coming into this whole thing called the Christian life is because I couldn't earn my earthly father's love, acceptance, and worth. So I thought if I could just do enough for God, he would love me, he'd accept me, and find me worthy. So that began a 30-year journey of what I call a performance-driven life. It was all about me trying to earn something from God, only to realize 30 years later, I had it all the moment I was saved at age 18. And so I would go through life, and I was thinking if I could just do enough for him. Now, what you need to understand is at that point, I really had severe strongholds. I mean, I was ridden by fear. I was anxious about everything. And so I go into business for myself. I become a general contractor, and was a commercial general contractor for 25 years. And during that time, I was just trying to figure out, how do I bring this Christian life into my life? How do I make it work? And I kept hearing this phrase, "If it's to be, it's up to me." So I kept thinking, well, okay, well, teach me the doctrine. So I went to a church where we learned the Bible in Greek and Hebrew. And I gained a tremendous amount of knowledge. And what I was told is take this knowledge, go out, and make your life work. Well, my friends, I did that. I tried and I tried and I tried. I wanted to set myself free. You see, I would see the verses on victory and freedom and healing, all the things that I wanted for myself. And I thought that God surely was going to help me if I do enough things for Him. So I'd go out and evangelize, I'd go out and minister, but it was for all the wrong reasons. It was for these reasons that I thought, well, maybe I can earn God's love, acceptance, and worth. Well, it seemed like God was doing the same thing my earthly father was doing, was raising the bar. I couldn't quite get there. And after 25 years, I got so discouraged, I thought, you know what, there must be something more to this. There must be something I'm missing. Because for the next 5 years, I just did a free fall. And what I didn't realize is that what God was about was I was in this 30-year funnel. And I didn't know that I was coming to the bottom of the funnel. But let me tell you where I was going just inside me. I was feeling very depressed. And by age 48, in 1998, I was totally depressed. I was so depressed, I felt like the only two options for me were suicide or institutionalization. Well, Paige and I had been married 10 years. And she came from an abusive alcoholic father. I did the same. Here were two empty cups trying to meet one another's needs. We had no idea what a relationship was like. She was a Christian. I was a Christian. But here we were trying to meet one another's needs, and we could never meet them. And so we just coped for that first 10 years. So at the end of the first 10 years of marriage, even though the business had done very well, we'd gone through about 6 years of adversity. You can only imagine what that did for my fear, anxiety, and feelings of inadequacy. But then the last 7 years leading up to 1998, we were very prosperous in Dallas doing commercial tenant finish work. But the thing about it was, whether it was adversity or prosperity, it was never filling the holes in my soul because I thought the Christian life was lived from the outside in. It was something I was trying to find out there to somehow fill the holes in my soul, to set me free, to experience the freedom and the healing that I so desperately wanted. Well, it was in the fall of 1998, and you need to understand I was going to a Bible church in Dallas. I had become an elder. The entire church had voted for me, so you thought that, well, maybe I'd arrived. Maybe somehow I'd reached the pinnacle of the Christian life. The question is, I couldn't understand why I felt so empty, why I felt in such despair. This certainly couldn't be the abundant life that was promised by Jesus. Well, I remember on October the 4th, 1998, sitting in my car in the parking lot of our church. Paige was off to a women's retreat, and I'm sitting there thinking, why do I want to go hear one more sermon that's not going to make a difference in my life? Because at that time, I really wanted out. The problem is I couldn't escape because here I am, an elder in the church. And I'm sitting there, and I didn't realize, but at that moment, I'd come to the bottom of the funnel when I had this question roll across my mind, and the question was this: are you done yet? And you know, folks, I knew who was saying it, and I knew the answer because I said, yes, Lord, I'm done. He says, I can't do it anymore. I tried. I've done everything I thought you wanted me to do. And he said, Bill, you've been living a lie. It's not about what you do for me. And I've brought a speaker here today, and he is going to give you the key that's going to unlock the door, the prison cell you've been in for 30 years. Well, I think it's the first time I ran into church. And so I dashed in there, and only to find out the speaker was 84 years old. Now, you need to understand that for the 30 years of my Christian life, I gained and accumulated all this knowledge, but you see, I didn't have the relationship. So what was left was that I became a critical spirit, self-serving, judgmental Pharisee. So I'm sitting there in my chair watching and looking at this 84-year-old man, thinking in my Phariseeism, what can this old man possibly say that's going to make any difference in my life? Well, he kind of confirmed that when he got out of his chair and he was just kind of shaking. He was trying to get to the pulpit. But when he put his hands on that pulpit, the first words out of his mouth were, God never intended for you to live the life that only Christ could live in and through you. My friends, I was stunned because it was the first time in my life somebody had ever told me I couldn't live it. And the bottom of the funnel for me was, I can't do it. And what he said is, Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Where are you in that verse? And I said, I'm not there. Well, let me tell you what. It wasn't just what he was saying. It was his life. I tell people that Ian Thomas, who was a speaker, could have been reading the phone book. It was life. It was rivers of living water pouring out of his life. And I knew right then, whatever it was, he had and I wanted. And he was there the next 5 days doing a conference. And I just followed him. I think it was almost like stalking him. I wanted to find out what it was about his life that was so different than any others. What does it mean for Christ to live his life in and through me? Well, that began a journey that's brought me here today. Because through these truths that I'm going to be sharing with you in this study, God is radically changing my life. He's setting me free from the fear, the anxiety, the inadequacy. Even to stand up here today, to be a part of this, God had to do such a radical work in my life. And now I really believe when Paul says he is able to do exceeding abundantly beyond all we could ask or think, that's what he's doing in my life. Now, I've not arrived. My wife will bear witness to that. But let me tell you what, I've gotten to places that I never thought I would see this side of eternity. So this study is not just a theological, intellectual exercise that I want to share with you. I want it to be, and I have been praying that it will be life-transforming. Because as we go through this study and God reveals these truths, what he wants to do is to radically change our lives. That's why he put his life in us. So I hope that you've been encouraged by just my short testimony. And next week, we're going to start lesson 1 of living life from a new source. Thank you.